Hi, welcome to Readings for Self-Existent One, Show 1. I'll be giving an introduction and then my first reading, that's from Genesis 37, Joseph's Coat of Many Colors. I'm Linda Redmond, and I'm producing this first show in early April 2018. I have been working to envision and promote suggestions for peace since my college years in the 1980s. In 2014, Self-Existent One, who many call God, relayed a message to me through a gifted listener. I had many Bible study sessions with this listener and another friend who had spent many years looking into the languages and history of the Holy Bible. Early December of 2017, I briefly visited University of California at Santa Barbara and met with the radio program coordinator. I was working on a public service announcement that the South American rainforest should be our ecological priority. This tip on what our ecological priority should be in 2015 came as a result of me asking my gifted listener of God friend, or my listener of Self-Existent One. About a week after I was away from that area, the big devastating fires near Santa Barbara hit. I wondered if somehow the fires were Self-Existent One's wrath. I learned from Self-Existent One, I believe, that it was a natural phenomenon. Soon after this inquiry, on December 9th and 10th, 2017, I was given a list of Bible readings for me to share via radio. So, in this series, I will be reading these first readings that I believe have been relayed by Self-Existent One. In February of 2018, it seemed that 1 week I got extra insights related to the first reading, and a week or two later I received insights related to the next reading. By early March, I was receiving insights related to the book of Revelation, which is not included in any of these selections. Basically, it seemed like our time is short to pay attention to Self-Existent One and open our eyes to old information, to dust off our family Bibles and look again. Related to the book of Revelation, I just want to mention that the tip was people want to make sure they get their name in the Lamb's Book of Life. And if they don't know what that is, they should look it up in the Bible. When I had the concern about the various translations of the Holy Bible, I was led to the Interlinear version, as well as many other versions on BibleHub.com. The Interlinear version that is available there has the Old Testament from Hebrew to the language selected, and like Hebrew, we need to read this from right to left. In the BibleHub.com Interlinear version, the New Testament is directly translated from Greek to whatever language. Read it as in English from left to right. The reason BibleHub.com/interlinear presents the New Testament from Greek and not Hebrew to whatever language may be because the message of Christ was mainly spread through the Roman Empire, especially by Paul and Timothy. Paul was a Jew and a Roman citizen. It is interesting to read the Greek to English because we can see how Paul translated Yeshua, which means he saves or he rescues in the Hebrew, to the Greek title Isios, which I believe was Paul's translation of he saves or he rescues into Greek. It sounds like SOS, where the term SOS came from. So, sos, Isios. So then this Greek got translated, Isios got translated to Jesus. So the term Jesus is actually really meant to mean he saves. The Bible is written as a recording of factual information. At the end of the readings, when I have some extra time, I will include information of science, archaeology, anthropology, and etymology. In 2014, I was one that believed the text of the Holy Bible had probably been altered over thousands of years. I now have learned of the special ways the original writings have been preserved and corroborated over time. I now believe gifted listeners of Self-Existent One have helped oversee textual accuracy over thousands of years. I have been guided to relay these readings in order. It is my understanding that Self-Existent One's response to the California fire calamities and probably disasters all around the world is to be concerned about the status of people's souls. So it seems to me that this is an introduction to the way of saving one's soul and being aware that in the midst of danger, it is a good idea to know you might have an edge on surviving if you consider calling out to Self-Existent One and Yeshua or Jesus, and consider leading an upright life. And consider getting your name in the Lamb's Book of Life and figuring out what that means. These are the selections. I was directed to read them in this order. 1. Genesis 37, Joseph's coat of many colors. 2. Exodus 32, the Israelites make a golden calf idol to worship. Number 3, 1 Samuel, especially chapter 3, when Samuel first hears from Self-Existent One, which in the Bible Hub is called, they translate as Yahweh. So I'll start with chapters 1 through 3. Number 4, more of 1 Samuel, about kings leading versus prophets. Next selection, number 5, is Numbers 16, the Korah rebellion. Number 6, Deuteronomy 32, the 6th selection of reading. Deuteronomy 32, which is the Song of Moses. The 7th reading is Job 22. 8th reading, Psalm 119, verses 1 through 176. It's like the ABCs of what Self-Existent One wants. Reading number 9 is Isaiah 1. Reading number 10, Jeremiah 7. Reading number 11, Ezekiel 18. Number 12, Matthew 6, especially 6:5, verse 5. Next reading is 1 Corinthians chapter 4. And the next reading is 1 Corinthians chapter 14. The last 4 readings are readings 14 through 17. And the first one is the letter of 1 John chapter 4, verse 16. Then back up to verse 1 and read all of it, and 7 especially well were the instructions. And reading number 15 is 2 John, the letter 2 John, number 2 John, chapter 1, verses 4 through 11. And then reading 16 is 3 John, chapter 1, verses 2 through 8, and verse 11. Verse 11 is very important, were the instructions. And reading number 17, Jude 3 through 16, then 17 through 23, and 24 is a beautiful prayer, was the instruction. So here's a little introduction to the first reading, the first reading of Genesis 37, Joseph's coat of many colors. I'll just start back with Sarah and Abram. They left cities that had this town where they were at. They were well off. Abram had a lot of servants and animals. He heard from God. Sarah, his wife, said, I'm going to follow the God you follow. They were married and they heard to leave. And so they left with all their animals and servants. Then, like I said, Abram was a listener of Self-Existent One, which is, the Hebrew letters are YHWH, which stands for Self-Existent One, or He who exists. In the ancient Hebrew, that's what it stands for. And I have some slides showing more of the history and things on YouTube, and that's under Eco Peace Vision with spaces in between those words. So then Sarah and Abraham have no children and are getting old. Sarah encourages Abraham to have a child with their servant woman. Then later, when they are about 90 years old, Self-Existent One directs them to have their own child, and that is Isaac. Later, Isaac has twins, Esau and Jacob. Jacob ends up with the inheritance, and he works hard to marry Rachel. He had to work for 7 years, and then the father gave him the oldest daughter first, so then he had to work another 7 years to get Rachel. Then he ends up having between her older sister, her servants, Rachel and her servants, he ended up having 12 sons. These 12 sons turned out to be the fathers of the 12 tribes of Israel. His name changes to Israel. Jacob's name changes to Israel. And then we'll hear about his son Joseph, who was the oldest of his wife Rachel. I'm going to be reading Genesis chapter 37, and it's at biblehub.com/interlinear/genesis/37.htm. We read from right to left backwards because it's directly from Hebrew. The Old Testament in the Interlinear is Hebrew. So the first subtitle of Genesis 37 is Joseph's Dreams. And we hear about Jacob, and that is the father. Later his name is Israel, and his sons, there's 12 sons that he has. They make up the 12 tribes of Israel. The son that was called Levi, they were the priests. Benjamin, family, the house of Benjamin. This story, that's the family of Israel, the beginnings of the family of Israel, is about 2,000 years before Jesus, the Messiah, comes. Not everybody's on board that he was the Messiah in the Jewish community, but anyway, his lineage is shown in the beginning of the book of Matthew in the New Testament, and it traces his lineage back to the son of Jacob, Israel, whose name was Judah. I encourage listeners to get the New International Version Study Bible. It has great pictures in it that are photographs of archaeological evidence of the different time periods, things that were happening in these stories. And it also has great timeline, so it really helps to get through the Bible and understand what's going on with that timeline. So it makes a great present for people, and you can find it cheaper on eBay, for example, or probably Amazon. So let's go ahead and read this. Some of the other versions, they will talk about Joseph's coat being ornate, but it says in the Interlinear that he had a coat of many colors. And my understanding is that each brother had one color, a coat of one color. They had one main skill, thing that they were good at. And Joseph had many colors. He had many gifts and skills. So let's read this then. And dwelled Jacob in the land wherein was a stranger his father, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, of age 7 and 10 years, was feeding with his brothers the flock, and the boy was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, wives of his father, and brought Joseph the report of their evil unto his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children. I want to just point out, make sure you notice his name just changed from Jacob to Israel. One theory has been that Israel could stand for Isis, Ra, a god, and El is a name can be a small g god. And as we read on, we can see perhaps why that it may not be a higher name. It may be a different name related to what the family of Israel ended up ending up in Egypt, getting highly influenced by the culture there before they were helped and freed from captivity. I'll continue reading on now. Now Israel loved Joseph more than his children, all his children, because the son of his old age he was unto him. I want to jump in with another point. Because Jacob or Israel says that loved his son Joseph because he was born when he was of old age, it's easy to think, oh, Joseph was the youngest. But in chapter 35, it shows that actually Joseph was the oldest son of Rachel. Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin, and the other sons were by first several were from her older sister, because he had to marry her older sister in order to be able to marry her, and then the other ones after that were from her servants, the servant of Rachel and the servant of Leah. So there is a interesting thing to look at. God said that the oldest child or the oldest son for the mother, by each mother, has is like a special, has importance as far as being a leader and being aligned with God. So it's interesting that the person that Jacob or Israel wanted to marry the most was Rachel, and her oldest son was Joseph. I think that's significant. And he made for him a coat of many colors. When saw his brothers that he loved him, their father, more than all his brothers, then they hated him and could not speak to him peacefully. And dreamed Joseph a dream, and he told it unto his brothers, and the more yet they hated him. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray, I have dreamed this which dream. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and see, arose my sheaf, and also stood upright, and behold, stood around your sheaves, and bowed down to my sheaf, and said to him, his brothers, Actually, shall you reign over us? Or truly, shall you have dominion over us? And the more yet they hated him for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed again, dream another, and told it unto his brothers, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream again, and behold, the sun and the moon and 1 and 10 stars bowed down to me. And he told it unto his father and unto his brothers, and rebuked him his father, and said to him, What dream is this that you have dreamed? Indeed, I will come, and your mother and your brothers to bow down to you, to the earth? And envied him his brothers, but his father observed the saying. Joseph sold by his brothers. And went his brothers to pasture the flock of their father in Shechem. And said Israel unto Joseph, Not your brothers do feed in Shechem? Come, and I will send you unto them. And he said to him, Here I am. And he said to him, Go, I pray, see whether it be well with your brothers, and well with the flocks, and bring me word. So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and found him a man, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and asked him the man, saying, What seek you? And he said, My brothers I seek. Tell me, I pray, to where they feed. And said the man, They are departed from here, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And went Joseph after his brothers, and found them in Dothan. When they saw him afar off, and even before he came near unto them, they conspired him to slay. And they said one unto another, Behold, the owner of the dream this comes.
Now come, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will slay the beast, some evil has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And heard Reuben, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Not kill his life. And he said unto Reuben, Not do shed blood, but cast him into pit, this that is in the wilderness, and hand not lay on him, do not lay a hand on him, to that end he might rid him out of their hands, to restore him unto his father. And it came to pass, when was come Joseph unto his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead, and with their camels bearing spices and balm and myrrh, going to bring them to Egypt. And said Judah unto his brothers, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and our hand not let be in for our brother, our flesh he is. And were content his brothers. Then there passed by then some Midianite merchants, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. And returned Reuben unto the pit, and behold, not was Joseph in the pit, and he tore his clothes. And he returned unto his brothers, and said, The child is not there, and I, where shall I go? And they took the coat of Joseph and killed, this is a title, Jacob mourns Joseph. And they took the coat of Joseph, and killed a young goat of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood, and they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it unto their father, and said, This have we found. Examine now the coat of your son, whether it be or not. And he knew it, and said, The coat is of my son. An evil beast has devoured him. Surely Joseph is torn in pieces. And tore Jacob his clothes, and put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned for his son days, many days.
I want to point out something here too, how the father ripped his coat, mourning his son. Well, when Jesus died on the cross, the curtain rips, the curtain in the temple, so that kind of alludes to Father God being equally sad about his son having died on the cross. That's what it looks like to me anyway.
See how the father's name is now Jacob after all this event happened. And tore Jacob his clothes, and put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned for his son days, many days, and rose up all his sons and all his daughters to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted, and he said, For I will go down unto for my son mourning into the grave, and wept for him his father. The Midianites sold him into Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard. So that's the beginnings of the family of Israel. They were, in this era, they were like shepherds tending animals. My understanding is they would have probably been selling those animals to Egypt as a way of making a living at that time. Later, we'll learn about, if you read on, that Joseph becomes a key helper for the Pharaoh, and later he's able to save his whole family from starvation when they show up, but they don't recognize him. And he has dreams there too, and his good attributes, his being responsible, allowed him to be very high up with the Pharaoh. So interesting story about the beginnings of the whole lineage that led up to Jesus. In the next show, we'll be reading Exodus 32, where Moses is leaving through the desert with 600,000, mostly Israelite men, plus additional women and children. And there were also other people that joined them that were not of the bloodline of the family of Israel. And throughout that time, different people have joined in as long as they're listening to God. This is Bible Study with Linda, and I hope you can join me for the next readings and commentary.
We're drawing to the end of this 30-minute show, and I just want to point out that back with the journey of Abraham and Sarah, the couple that was before the couple of Isaac and Rebekah, and then we have the couple of Jacob and Rachel and the other wives that Jacob had. Back with Abraham and Sarah, I just want to mention that they started out at one city called Ur, and then they moved to another city called Haran, Harran. And those two cities were along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and the last one, Haran, was towards Turkey. Then they moved down towards Shechem and Bethel, and those cities were along the Mediterranean Sea to the south, and those cities are just north of where Jerusalem is now. In the Bible it says that Sarah, and her name was pronounced Sarai at that time. Abram was their names at first. They tried to have a child as early as the city of Ur after they were married, but they were not able to have a child until Sarah was then aged 90 and Abraham was about 99. So before that already, these two cities that they started out in, Ur and Haran, there was worship of the moon god there, and the father of Abram at that time, that's what his name was involved with worshiping these other gods. So Abram could hear from God, and he told Sarah, "This is the God I'm following, the one I'm hearing from." And she said, "I'm going to follow the God you're following." And also in these cities, different cities of that time, when people got off track from following the God of Abraham, they would end up having temple prostitution and extra babies, and then babies being sacrificed to gods for dark energy. So this was the kind of thing that was happening, and Sarah didn't want to be part of that kind of thing. And so still they didn't have a child until after Sodom and Gomorrah had been totally destroyed by God and helpers. And we have archaeological evidence of those cities being destroyed, but I think it can have to do with the amount of time before Sarah had a child. Sarah and Abraham could have had to do with God making sure that they did stay in alignment with God for a long period of time. The last thing I want to bring up related to this reading is that Sarah was aligned with God, but the wife of Isaac, Abraham and Sarah's son, her name was Rachel. She was really concerned about her family, that her son Jacob marry into her side of the family, not to marry a Canaanite woman like the other brother had done. But it turns out that her family, they were not really aligned with the God of Jacob and Abraham. And I'm not completely sure Rebecca was so much either. It's very important to note when any generation, if one of the parents even is not really aligned with God, the next generation can get completely out of alignment. So that has big implications. Joseph was in alignment, so that was great.